Welcome to the Business of Apparel podcast. This is the place to learn how to start and scale your own apparel brand and fill it with loyal customers for years to come. I'm your host, Rachel Erickson, owner and CEO of Unmarked Street. I can't wait to share this episode with you. Hello, and welcome back to the Business of Apparel podcast. Today, I'm going to get a little frou-frou on you. I'm going to talk a little woo at you and tell you a little bit about a business journey that I've been on with my companies that has really helped me get perspective about the definition of success. And I think that this is totally valid to share out here because for you also working in the apparel industry or starting your own apparel company, it's important to remember that money is not always the only measure of success. And there's something beautiful about starting your own business, starting your own company, starting an adventure in entrepreneurship that really allows you to embrace more beyond the numbers. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge numbers person. I look at our budget and I look at the numbers and I look at the metrics and I look at all of that so often that it's almost cumbersome how often I'm looking at the numbers, but that's just kind of also how my brain works. It's a little bit how I kind of calm myself down when I'm worrying about things, or if I'm a little bit anxious about the business, I'll go back through the numbers and make sure that everything makes sense and the logic is all there. But recently I've been going through a little bit of a lull in the business. At the beginning of the year, 2023, there were two huge contracts that Unmarked Street was working on that ended up getting canceled. And the reason for canceling is because these two companies both went through massive layoffs in January. And because of that, the companies were also cutting all contracts with contractors and independent workers. We really felt for the team members that we were working with because a couple of them got laid off from their roles. It was a really ugly and terrible situation to be a part of. Layoffs are never pretty and they're never fun, regardless of whether you're being affected by the layoff internally or externally, or if you're one of the people being laid off. It's always yucky. It's never fun. But we were impacted by it and we ended up losing more than half of our monthly recurring revenue because of these two cancellations. And at first I went into like full panic mode. I went into, holy shit, how are we going to get back to where we were at the end of 2022? We were feeling really good. The team had a lot of work on their plate. Everybody was feeling happy about their hours. I was feeling really comfortable to start stepping more into like a CEO role, delegating out and really trusting the people at the company to take on exactly the work that they wanted to take on and letting them do it in their own way. And when that shift came, my panic and my worry had to lead somewhere else. Like I couldn't stay in that mindset for too long without feeling like I was doing a disservice to what we had already been building. We had been building this company based on not being in the rat race and not feeling like we had to hit metrics and numbers and revenue goals the way that a lot of other companies do. Like I wanted to kind of do it my way. And part of that is working toward a 4-day work week. And part of that is having employees who want to work part-time or who want to work as independent contractors and have their own side businesses and take other contracts and do other things outside of what Unmarked Street is offering them so that we can all live our best lives in whatever definition that is. Like I didn't want to be constantly worrying and chasing sales and putting people in positions and asking people to do things that they weren't happy doing or comfortable doing. So I had to take a little bit of an inward journey. And for those of you who are getting to know me, you probably can guess that that resulted in some book reading. I spent a ton of time with some new books. A lot of them are based around business advice and how to delegate more, how to be better by doing less. And so I had started reading Timothy Ferriss's The 4-Hour Work Week in 2022. And I got really into it really fast. Like I had this little like worksheet with me. I was doing the exercises that were in the book, and I was really trying to figure out like, what does my version of what he proposes in that book, which is kind of like all of these little mini retirements throughout your life, instead of like working like a dog for years and years and years, with this, end goal retirement when we're old in mind. Like, how do we live our lives now, enjoy our lives now, take these little mini retirements, figure out how to have like pure enjoyment in our lives now? And a lot of that is through, but what he kind of basically talks about is delegation and prioritization, right? So if there's something that can be done that you don't personally need to do, can you pay someone else to do it? Can you hire someone else to do it? Can you trade hours with someone to do it? And that started me on a little bit of a path of like asking for help. And that is when in 2022, I did really start to lean in to the idea of, businesses won't grow unless you ask for help. One person cannot ever do it all. Like, there's just no way that you can ever tick every single check off of the list if you're doing it all by yourself. And by bringing in Jen and Jessica, who are the independent contractors who work for Unmarked Street as client representatives, they work with the clients, they do a lot of the work with the clients. I'm also there with them, but at the same time, they're doing the bulk of the work. And without them doing all that they do every day, I wouldn't be able to go off and figure out how to manage our social media or have the time to look at the numbers and look at the books and feel like we're in a good place and that we're still solid. I wouldn't have time to do those things if I was also still having to do the day-to-day client work and owning all of that as well. I still oversee it, but that's a very different level of involvement than actually doing. So that's kind of where that started. Social media was definitely something that I was happy to take off of my plate when I could. Right now, because of the lower contracts, I'm back on it myself, and I've been doing a lot of my own social media. And to be honest, that has been a really good learning opportunity for me to understand what the most productive flow of social media is for Unmarked Street and the podcast and for RTQ Apparel. Like, what do I think is gaining me followers? What kind of content do I want to be putting out there? I'm finding my voice a little bit more. I'm trying to be a little bit more funny and humorous and like let that side of me show. And so taking that back, because we had a little bit of a like monetary pinch, I think actually ended up being a really good thing. Ultimately, it's just not where my genius lies. Like I will never be as good at doing all of the social media things as someone who is like a professional at it and, studied marketing and understands all the strategies and all the analytics. Like I eventually will need to ask for help in that realm again too. After I read Timothy's book, that kind of started. And then the next book that I ended up picking up was Atomic Habits by James Clear. And in Atomic Habits, we get into this step. And again, I had like this worksheet with me that I was kind of writing on all the time as I was reading the book. And I got into a place through the book where I was attaching a lot to what he calls habit stacking. And this idea of like, there are some things that you just naturally do every day. You already have these habits. And then there are habits that you want to start, like good habits that you want to bring into your life. So how do you stack some of those things to make them easier to accomplish, right? So if I want to start running every day or getting out for a walk every single day, and I have a cup of coffee every morning, like how can I stack those things so that every time I have a cup of coffee, it triggers, okay, and now it's time for my 30-minute walk. Like how do you stack those things so that like that kind of automatic response system that you have when it comes to habits triggers in you every single day so that you're not just doing the things that you already do so well all the time, but how do you then also stack on an action that you want to add? not necessarily that practice in and of itself changed a lot for me, but it prompted this idea in my head of taking the idea of habit stacking and putting it into like a daily schedule. And what would that look like? Like if I stacked all of the little habits that I have every single day, have a cup of coffee, brush my teeth, take a shower, do the laundry, whatever those things are throughout my day, how do I then stack that with something that I want to start doing? I want to go back and start swimming again. I want to start getting on my bike again. I want to go back to a yoga practice. How could I fit all of those things in to a day and then to a full week? And it was really interesting. I put it into a calendar after I figured out all my habit stacks that I wanted to do. And it ended up being a full week of every day being like 9 hours. It included gardening, and there was a whole bunch of stuff that I really wanted to start spending more time doing. And I looked at my husband at the time and I said, well, this is me in retirement, like 10 years from now. Let's start looking at what this looks like for me. And this is going to be my day. This is going to be my week. And something about saying that to him flipped a switch for me. Something in the universe was calling out to me. And all of a sudden it dawned on me that that's so ridiculous. Like this idea that I want to just start spending 30 minutes in the garden every day. Like I totally have 30 minutes to spend in the garden every day. The fact that I can look forward to that in 10 years is kind of insane. And so I took the habit stacks that I thought I could start to accomplish now and started building them into my day. And it became a really great period of time for me. This was still early 2023. I think we had been off of those 2 big contracts now for probably 3 or 4 weeks. I had spent 3 or 4 weeks worrying and kind of in this little like anxiety bubble. And then I started habit stacking and putting that kind of activity into my calendar. And all of a sudden I felt a serious sense of just like peace and calm. I was spending my day the way that I wanted to spend my day, but I was still getting work done. Like I was able to rearrange those habit stacks of what I wanted to be doing around my meetings and around client work and around recording the podcast and doing the social media and all of that. And I started to find that I was scheduling in time for nonsense. I was creating busy work. And I don't think I would have recognized that so well if I hadn't read the 4-Hour Work Week prior to Atomic Habits, because Timothy Ferriss talks about that a lot, right? Like we spend a lot of time creating work, like just to feel busy or to look busy or to be busy. And it's not necessarily anything getting closer to the finish line of the goals that we're trying to achieve. So by really like stripping out my calendar of things that were not necessary. I mean, meetings with my clients are 100% necessary. Like that, like building those relationships and supporting them and helping them and being a part of their ecosystem and helping them grow and seeing all of that happen is like my calling. Like it is 100% why I am doing what I'm doing. That is super important. It is like my number one priority on the list. But once we start getting down into like, update the computer today to make sure that I checked for Windows updates and back up these files every week. And I don't know, there were just like plenty of little things that were like, I don't need to do that every week. And I certainly don't need to do some of these things every single day. So let's get them out. Let's be a little bit more realistic. And then how do I work in the things that make sense, or the things that make sense for me to have a good day every day? And I've been talking about this a little bit with my therapist too, because this is kind of the place that she's been trying to get me to for a couple of years now. Like, how do we get me to a place where I don't feel like every day is such a grind and I'm, feeding my workaholic tendencies like to the core every single day? How do I find time to just be a human? She says that to me a lot. Like, how do you just be a human being without feeling like you're having to do something for the business or for someone else or do something that you're checking off of a list? And that flow started to really happen for me. And it was then that after I finished Atomic Habits, I picked up Kate Northrup's book, Do Less. And her book is really, really interesting in this idea. There's two different things. So number one, this idea of studying your 80-20. And I talk a lot about this in the apparel industry when it comes to SKU rationalization and line planning. So if you have a line of 100 different products, I bet you, if you look at the numbers properly, 20 of those 100 products are doing 80% of your line. So 20 or less of those products in your line are making 80% of your money or more. That's usually how the math works out. It is uncanny how the 80-20 rule shows up like that in the apparel universe. It actually shows up all over the place. And she really leverages that in her book by kind of prompting you to say, what are the 20% of the activities that I do that make the 80% of the revenue that I make? So am I going to speaking gigs? Like, am I speaking on stage? And those speaking gigs end up leading to 80% or more of my client base, which ends up being a lot of my revenue. Or, is it this podcast? Are people reaching out to me through the podcast? And all of a sudden I'm reaching a huge audience. And so it's bringing clients my way. Like, what are those things? Like, what are those tasks that I can do every day that end up reaping the biggest rewards? And then how do you just focus on those tasks? Because 9 times out of 10 as well, she says, like, those end up being kind of your favorite tasks. You end up enjoying them. Like, believe it or not, the things you enjoy, you do really well and you put the right attitude into, and then they reap rewards. It's not that hard to figure out. And so she promotes that a lot, the 80-20, which I really liked because I'm also teaching that kind of in my own way. And the second thing that she really focuses on in the book is, as a woman, it's really interesting to understand through the research that she's done that a lot of the world is built on a 24-hour time clock, right? Like, we go through a day and we're expected to be productive every day by doing something. Like, how do we at least check 1 or 3 things off of our list every single day? The 24-hour time clock, according to her book, is based on the male testosterone energy levels. So males with their testosterone levels go through a full cycle of productivity every 24 hours. As a woman, with our cycles, we go through that same level or that same cycle of productivity every 28 days. Being able to start paying attention to where I feel productive, where I feel motivated versus where I feel intuitive and quiet and a little bit introverted or wanting to rest and relax, like, paying attention to that all of a sudden has been huge. There have been so many weekends where I go out and I try to do like a video production day so that we can make sure to have, enough videos for the next month, and we're editing and we're doing all these things. But if those video production days end up being on weekends where I don't really have the right energy to like connect and be visible, I'm not really putting out my best effort. And it's true that like some of those videos that are done on those weekends are not the best. So how do I like schedule future production days to make sure that I'm in the right energy, in the right mind space, so that the work that we do is better than if it was done in a different energy level? So that's been something really interesting too. And of course, she talks about like women's menstrual cycles throughout that 28 days. But more interestingly, and what I'm finding out about myself, is that if you don't have a cycle, like a menstrual cycle, you can still follow this energy level by following the phases of the moon. And following the lunar phases, I'm actually finding my energy follows the moon more than it follows the hormones inside my very own body, which I kind of secretly love. Like, there's a little bit of a smile that goes on my face to feel like I'm connected with nature a little bit in that way. As I've been tracking that more and more and understanding that the phases of the moon really do affect my energy levels and what I'm feeling like doing every single day, that's really helping me steer the ship, if you will, toward the right direction. So I finished Kate's book. And in her book, she also recommends reading Gay Hendrix's The Big Leap, which has been recommended to me a couple different times. Number one by my coach, the amazing Carrie Murphy, and a couple other people have mentioned that book to me. I also have like a little bit of a connection there. And so that was a natural one to pick up next. So I read The Big Leap, and I feel like it just brought together these few books that I've been reading, all of this learning that I've been doing, all of this inner exploration that I've been going through, by kind of talking a lot about your inner zone of genius and really figuring out what it is that you love to do. Like, what activities do you love so much that when you do them, time almost stops? Like, you don't even notice that time is flying by when you're doing those things. I'm going to 100% admit, when I am sitting right here doing this podcast, whether it's talking to you by myself or whether it's talking to you through an interview with someone that I know in the apparel industry, time stops for me. I love doing it. I love being able to give my knowledge away. I spent so many years trying to learn as much as I possibly could about the apparel industry and helping these billion-dollar companies become more and more billion-dollar-y. And now I want that knowledge and that information to go to people who could use it more. Like, I don't need that huge company over there to continue making $1 billion. Good for them. That's awesome. Like, they got there by doing things the right way. But now that knowledge can go to you, and I'm hoping to be able to teach that. So this is a huge passion project of mine. This is something that I've clearly started to understand as being in my zone of genius. And so I'm trying to figure out how to define, like, what does that really mean though? Like, what is it that I love to do? How do I define that in a way that that starts to make more sense for everything else around me too? Because Gay Hendricks in the book talks a lot about not really doing anything in your life that's outside your zone of genius, and how that can lead to abundance and happiness and success and wealth in ways that none of us could have maybe ever anticipated. Like, if you were only ever doing things that you wanted to do all day, every day, whether it's in your business life, your personal life, or anything else, time would kind of stop for you and you would just be in pure happiness and enjoyment every single day. Like, how many of us do things that we feel like we're obligated to do, or we feel like we have to do because of some social norm, or family or friends pressuring you to do it, or feeling like the business is requiring you to do something? Like, how beautiful would it be if we could step out of that every day and just focus on the things that really make us happy? I think that would lead to such an amazing way of working. And so that's kind of where I'm at on this journey currently. I just finished the book. There's some mantras in there that I'm trying to get used to saying to myself every single day. There's a lot of new information that I'm processing after reading these 4 books and trying to kind of figure out how that moves into my life and into my businesses. But I will say there is just a new understanding that the numbers aren't everything. Success can look like calm. Like, the fact that I have found moments of serenity and calm and just happiness and joy in my business and in my life over the last couple of months is a new definition of success. And we might be down on revenue right now, but the time that I was able to take, because we were low on client hours, to figure this out and to understand all of this new information about myself and about this beautiful potential way of moving forward, is so worth it. It's still so valuable. It's still a success in and of its own, to be able to say that I'm here now, and someday when we do start to make more money again, like, I can bring this kind of an attitude to it, and I can bring love and kindness to it, as opposed to anxiousness and worry and like this drive to just constantly be going. I just wanted to say today that if you can find a way to work on your zone of genius, what are the things that you love to do? And if you find the right time to be doing those tasks every day, is money really the answer then? Like I feel like so many people are seeking out money and revenue goals for the sake of happiness. Like if I just make this much money, I can go on this vacation and that will make me happy. Or if we finally put this much money in our account, we can retire and then we can be happy. But if you're not happy now, will you even know how to be happy then? Like, are you training your heart and your brain and your body to understand what happiness even is if you're miserable getting to that point? And I will say, I think I've been there. I think I've been so burnt out, and I hate to use the word miserable, but I think there have been moments where I've been so miserable trying to be a part of the rat race that I forgot to be happy today. I encourage you to read any of these books. If you'd like a link or a recommendation to any other books that I'm trying to read right now, let me know. But these are great ones. The 4-Hour Workweek, Atomic Habits, Do Less, and The Big Leap. Those are the 4 books that I recently read that kind of have put me through this transformation. And I really look forward to hearing what you think of the books and what you thought of this podcast. And I wish you a very calm, serene, peaceful, wonderful day for the rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening to the Business of Apparel podcast. I would so appreciate hearing your thoughts on the show. And if you know someone who could benefit from it, please share it with them. My biggest desire is to help other apparel professionals understand the nuances of our industry so we can all work toward making better product for a better world. If you would like to connect further, I'd love to invite you to send me a message through my website, unmarkstreet.com, where I do weekly trainings through my video channel, a monthly newsletter, and offer so many resources to help you start and scale a profitable apparel brand.